back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final.
Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Thursday, October 31st. Happy Halloween. We have a lot to cover on the show today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, tip or donate, get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following, make sure to click on the Super Chat button in the chat. This will help create a Super Chat of any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. I will acknowledge it, and it just makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate your guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. The other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, gsmcpodcast.net. That is gsmcpodcast.net. So let's get into what we are going to discuss for today. So we're going to start off the show. We are going to preview tonight's game between the Houston Texans and the New York Jets. Two teams heading in different directions. We'll get into that. And then we'll get into a bunch of recaps. We'll recap the Falcons-Buccaneers game in the second part of the show. The Falcons picking up a win there. We'll talk about it as the Buccaneers continue to lose games. We'll get into all that. Then in the third part of the show, we'll talk about Tua and his return to the field, how he did. And we'll talk about the game because the Dolphins ended up losing to the Cardinals. So even with Tua coming back, Dolphins weren't able to get a win. Then we'll get into the Bengals-Eagles game. Eagles winning 37-17. And then in the final part of the show, we'll talk about the Chiefs and their win over the Raiders. So let's get into the first topic now, which is discussing Texans-Jets. So if you remember last year, it was late in the season. Zach Wilson was the quarterback, and the Jets won that game, and they won pretty handily. It was a bad weather game, and the Jets won that game. I believe the score was 31-7, but I just want to double check just to make sure that that's what the score was. But yeah, it was kind of a surprising game. Oh, 30-6. 30-6. I was close, but yeah, 30-6 was the final score. You had Zach Wilson playing well in that game. The defense shut down C.J.Stroud in that offense. And now you flash forward, or you fast forward to now, and the Texans right now, they got one of the best records in football. They're 6-2. They're playing some good football. And the Jets, with all the changes and Aaron Rodgers coming back, they find themselves at 2-6. And what's interesting about this game tonight is the fact that the Jets are favored. Right now they are 2-point favorites in this game. And you're probably sitting there going, how is that even possible? How is that possible? Well, I think one of the main things is it's the Aaron Rodgers effect. But, you look at these two teams, the records are not close. And the Jets, they've struggled this year. And the defense is worse than last year. They're a team that has struggled to stop the run. And just the team in general, they are a team that gets heavily penalized for many different things. So it is interesting. And it does make me pause and say, well, what should I do with this game tonight? Well, I've kept picking the Jets. I keep picking the Jets every week, and they keep disappointing me. So, and after this loss to the Patriots, I'm pretty much off. I'm off the train. I'm off of it. And you know what's going to end up happening? They'll probably just start winning games and look like the team that I was saying they could be before the season started. But I guess that's what I got to do for them to wake up. But I'm still going to take the Texans tonight because even though, and this is probably the other reason too why the Jets are favored, is because they're down 2 wideouts in this game. And that is no Nico Collins. He'll be back next week. And now there's no Stephon Diggs. Unfortunately, he's out for the year with a torn ACL. So your top wideout going into this game is Tank Dell. And you got John Mechie on the team, Xavier Hutchinson. They do have depth at the wide receiver position. But I think for me, tonight is once again going to be a Joe Mixon game. The Texans are going to have to rely upon Joe Mixon because the Jets are not good against the run. They're not. And the Texans can run the football. Now that they got Joe Mixon back, and since he's come back, he's been awesome. You know, picked up right where he left off when he got hurt in week 2 and missed those weeks. He's been great. And I think that's going to continue in this game. And I just think, you know, the Texans, they have an advantage at quarterback right now. They got the advantage when it comes to the head coach. I just think ultimately, you know, the Jets are going to be 2-7 after this game tonight. Now, if the Jets end up winning this game, will I be surprised? No. I will not be surprised. Nothing surprises me. Nothing surprises me anymore. I might be capping a little bit, but certain things don't surprise me. Let's say that. Certain things. I like to contradict myself a lot. But yet, certain things won't surprise me. If the Jets go out there and they win tonight and the defense gets to C.J.Stroud and they sack him 5 times and, you know, they win 27 to 17 or something, yeah, I mean, it's not going to surprise me. Because this team is talented. But how people have put it in the media, they have talent. They're talented, but they're not a team. Or however they put it. They got talent, but they're not a team. That's what they are. They have a collection of talent, but they are not a team. And that is one of the things that, you know, I talked about going into the season is just, I mean, mainly it comes with coaching. Because coaching was a big reason why I was like, yeah, you're taking a risk here. And that's one of the main reasons why the Jets are in the position that they're in right now. And, you know, you look at Aaron Rodgers this season, and has he been the MVP the 4-time MVP? No. But you look at his numbers. I mean, by the end of the night, he's going to have over 2,000 passing yards, 12 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. I mean, is it great? No. But is it bad? Absolutely not. He hasn't been horrendous this year. There have been moments. I mean, the 3-pick game against the Vikings was not good, but they still had a chance to win that game. And you know what? When you look at a lot of the games that the Jets lost, outside of the 49ers game, the Jets could have won each of the games. I mean, the Steelers, I know they hung 37 on them, but the Jets were up 15-6 in that game. Even, you know, despite him throwing 3 interceptions, the Jets had an opportunity to go down the field against the Vikings in London and beat them. It's just there are other components to this. The defense is not as good, and I don't know what happened to Greg Zuerlein, but he hasn't been good either. He's been missing kicks in crucial moments. So it's a mess of a season for the Jets, and I don't know where they go from here after this year. I really don't. Does Rodgers retire? You know, do they take a quarterback? You know, right now, if the season ends today, they're picking in the top 10. So, I really don't know. But some of the things that they did this offseason, and this was pointed out, is some of the rotational players that they let go. Some of the other guys on the defense they let go. Letting Bryce Huff go, even though some Jet fans that I've talked to say he wasn't as good as people have thought. But you let him go. You traded John Franklin Myers to the Broncos. That was another trade that I think hurt them. There were guys that on this defensive line that they just, let go or traded, and, it ended up costing them right now. I mean, Hassan Reddick being out, they thought he was going to be a difference maker. I mean, we'll see. I mean, he didn't show up in the stat sheet against the Patriots, but, he's going to get more snaps as we move along here. But, you had that, and then you had Jermaine Johnson tearing his Achilles. It's just, the defense took a step back. And that's one of the big, that's the other thing. Like, I did not expect the defense to take a step back. I thought now you have Rodgers, you're going to have a better offense. I thought this defense was going to show up, and it really hasn't. It hasn't. So let's kind of run through the league rankings. So passing yards per game, Texans are 7th, Jets are 11th. Rushing yards per game, the Jets are actually 30th, even though Breece Hall has been making plays as of late, but it's in the passing game. Texans actually are 18th, averaging 118.9 rushing yards per game, but that also had to do with the fact that, Joe Mixon was out. So if Joe Mixon played every game, they wouldn't be 18th. They're going to continue to go up, especially after tonight, if the Jets' run defense doesn't show up, which it really hasn't all year. And then points per game, Jets are 25th, and the Texans are 14th. Then they're on the defensive side of the ball. Surprisingly, the Jets are second against the pass, giving up an average of 180 passing yards per game, and then the Texans are fourth, giving up an average of 188.1 passing yards per game. And then against the run, the Jets are 17th, and the Texans are 13th. Points allowed, Jets defense is 11th, and the Texans is 15th. You look at some... you're giving up 23 points to both the Vikings and the Bills. 37 to the Steelers, 25 to the Patriots. 10 to the Broncos. It's just... They're a middle-of-the-pack defense right now. And it's just... I would have thought that against the run, they'd be a little bit lower, but they're not. So... But yeah, I just think they are they're going to struggle tonight. They are. So we'll see what happens. But even with the Jets being favored, I'm still going to take the Texans here. Like I said, certain things will not surprise me. If the Jets win, I'm not going to be like, wow, this is unreal. I did not see this coming. But I just think the Texans are going to rely upon Joe Mixon with them being shorthanded at receiver. They're going to, like I said, they'll get Nico Collins back most likely next week, which is huge. They're going to need him, especially with Diggs being out. But, yeah, I think you rely on Joe Mixon. You play good defense. You get after Aaron Rodgers, and I think the Texans ultimately get the win. They improve to 7-2, and the Jets would drop to 2-7. So I'm going to take the Texans. I'm going to say they win. I think it's going to be another – I think it's going to be close. I think it'll be close. I'm going to say they win 24-20. That'll be my final score there. Because the Texans, they really don't blow people out. They really don't. Against Jacksonville, it was a close game. Against the Colts the other day, it was close. They really don't blow people out. So, and it is a road game. Got to factor that in. But I just think they're the better team. So, I'm going to take the Texans, but we'll see what happens. But, yeah, let me know what you guys think. Who do you think wins this game tonight? Let me know in the comments. So, we're going to take our first break. When we come back, we will discuss the Falcons-Buccaneers game. Falcons getting the win in that. So, we'll talk about that when we return from our first break. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for the second part of the show, we are going to now get into talking about the Falcons-Buccaneers game from Sunday. This was a big matchup. These teams met a few weeks ago, and the Falcons got the best of the Bucs in that game in overtime, winning 36-20. Kirk Cousins throwing for 500 yards in that game. And, you know, since then, the Buccaneers just have been running into some bad luck with when it comes to their receivers. You know, no Mike Evans in this game, no Chris Godwin. And, you know, despite that, you know, it still ended up being a close game. And the Buccaneers definitely could have won. But one of the things that they are, you know, struggling with, besides, you know, just being injured at the receiver position, is the fact that their defense just has not been playing good. Their defense has been giving up a lot of points. And, you know, Baker Mayfield and that shorthanded offense has to keep up with these teams. I mean, you know, last week they played against the Ravens. Ravens put up 41 points against them. You know, when Mike Evans went out, you know, Baker threw a couple of interceptions. And, you know, now you got to keep up with the Falcons team that's inconsistent, but, you know, they've proven in these two games that they could put up points on this Buccaneers defense. And, you know, Baker and the offense did what it could do. But in the end, it just wasn't enough, and they can't come up short. Going through the game summary, the Bucs got the ball first, and they immediately fumbled. You know, 2 plays into the drive, they fumble. Rachaad White ends up fumbling. It gets recovered by Jesse Bates, and Kirk Cousins turns that into a touchdown. On 4th and 3, he connects with Kyle Pitts for a 36-yard touchdown. There was a defensive holding on the play. But, yeah, that put them up 7-0. Kyle Pitts actually had a big day on National Tight Ends Day. Forgot to even mention that it was National Tight Ends Day. And a lot of tight ends showed out. George Kittle was good. Kate Otten in this game was good. Kyle Pitts was good. A lot of tight ends showed out. But then the Bucs answered. You know, 15 plays, 70 yards, 8.5 minutes of time of possession. And, like I said, Baker Mayfield connects with Kate Otten for a 5-yard touchdown. So they tied the game there. Then the Falcons punted, and then the Bucs, they had the lead. On 3rd and 8 from their 28, Baker connected with Kate Otten for a 29-yard pass play. They eventually get down to the Falcons 18, and Baker connected with Rachaad White for an 18-yard touchdown. So, yeah, they were up 14-7. You got to feel good. You know, keep it going. But then the Falcons responded. 7 plays, 70 yards. Kirk Cousins connected with Kyle Pitts for a 49-yard touchdown. Now, it looked like it was going to end up being a touchback because it got knocked out of his hands, but they ended up reviewing it and it was upheld. And he did cross the plane right before it got knocked out. So it was 14-14 at that point. Buccaneers then punted. Falcons, another touchdown. Kirk Cousins connected with Darnell Mooney for a 30-yard touchdown. So that made it 21-14. Bucs responded, kicking a field goal with Chase McLaughlin. It was a 52-yarder. But the Falcons then responded with the field goal of their own, Younghoe Koo from 39 yards out. So at the half, it was 24-17. Then Falcons punted on their first drive in the second half. Baker threw an interception, but the Falcons didn't do anything with it. Buccaneers then turned it over on downs on their drive. They went for it on 4th and 3, and they ended up losing 2 yards. And then the Falcons turned that into a touchdown. Kirk Cousins connected with Bijan Robinson for a 6-yard touchdown. So that made it 31-17. Baker once again throws another pick, trying to hit Jalen McMillan. They were at the Atlanta 24. Then there ended up being a safety, so that made it 31-19, and then the Buccaneers turned that into a touchdown. Baker Mayfield connected with Cade Otton for another touchdown, so that made it 31-26. And then the Falcons missed a field goal. So, the Bucs had, a minute to drive down the field, but, they got down to the Atlanta 33, but there were a couple of penalties, and they couldn't score on that drive. They ran, well, partly because they ran out of time, but yeah, it's another loss. They dropped to 4-4. Kirk Cousins, very good game. 23 of 29, 276 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Did have the fumble that, or did have a fumble, but yeah, he also had the safety that ended up happening. Bijan Robinson, 63 yards on the ground. Tyler Algier had 33 yards on the ground. Ray McLeod, 1 carry for 17 yards. Kirk Cousins actually had 16 yards rushing. So maybe, getting more confidence in his legs when he has to. He had a 13-yard run in this game. Kyle Pitts, big game. 4 receptions for 91 yards and 2 touchdowns. Darnell Mooney had 4 for 86 and a touchdown. Bijan Robinson had 7 for 43 and a touchdown. Drake London, 4 for 34. The Falcons' defense, no sacks in this game. Younghoe Koo went 1 for 2 on field goals, 4 for 4 on extra points. Then for the Buccaneers, Baker Mayfield, he's a mixed bag. He throws for over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, but then you got the 2 interceptions. He went 37 of 50. Bucky Irving had 44 yards on the ground. He was their leading rusher. Rashad White only had 29 yards on the ground. The Bucs as a team only ran the ball for 102 yards. Cade Otton was their leading receiver, 9 receptions for 81 yards and 2 touchdowns. Raheem Jarrett had 3 receptions for 58 yards. Bucky Irving had 7 for 40. Rashad White had 5 for 38. And a touchdown. Jalen McMillan had 4 for 35. Trey Palmer had 2 for 29. The Bucs defense had 2 sacks in this game, but, they're giving up a ton of yards. The Falcons finished with 394 yards. And actually, the Bucs had 432 yards of offense, and they ran 12 more plays than the Falcons did. But the Falcons also at times had shorter field position to score. But, the Falcons now improved 2-0 against the Bucs on the season. And, right now you look at this division and you like the Falcons' chances. They got the Cowboys at home coming up this week, and the Cowboys are not playing well. They're not playing well. Dak and CeeDee got it going at the end, but, you could say, well, that was in garbage time. I think that'll be a competitive game because I don't trust the Falcons. I don't. I trust them enough to win the division, but I don't trust them in other games, in certain games. Like this game, I don't trust them. Like, I think they should win because the Cowboys have not been playing great, but the consistency with this offense has been a question. Has been in question because, you put up 36 points against the Bucs in Week 5. You put up 38 points against the Panthers in Week 6. And you won them in 2 different ways. The Week 5 game against the Bucs was with the passing game, and the Week 6 matchup against the Panthers, that was more of the running game. And then you go up against Seattle, and Kirk Cousins turns the ball over 3 times, and the Seahawks end up winning 34-14. But now this week you play against the Bucs, you put up 31 points. Kirk Cousins has 4 touchdowns. It's just the consistency of this team. They still got to work on that. And again, Cowboys are not playing great, but would not surprise me if they ended up winning this game. So, but they're 5-3 and they're in the driver's seat. Regardless of what I'm saying here, they're in the driver's seat right now to win this division. They are. And for the Buccaneers, it's unfortunate what's going on with them right now because they really should have beaten the Falcons in Week 5, and then they'd at least be 5-3 right now. But now you got to go to Arrowhead this week on Monday Night Football, shorthanded, And then you got the 49ers at home the following week. So they're looking at 4-6. And, I talked about it. The Bucs are playing really good to start off the year. And I said, just do not have that midseason collapse like you did last year. But then they were able to turn it around and make the playoffs and win the division. You're not going to be able to do that. Now, if they could find a way, to somehow split the Chiefs and 49ers games. They could find a way. Then you go into the bye, you come out, you take on the Giants, you take on the Panthers, you take on the Raiders. So if you could split, go 5-5, and you come out of the bye week, you're looking at possibly 3 straight wins. Now, it's not going to be easy. The one game, believe it or not, I think the toughest game out of those 3 is the Giants, because the Giants have a good defense. But they just can't put up points. And, the Buccaneers defense has struggled this year. But then again, the Giants have gone up against defenses like the Bengals defense, which is one of the worst defenses in football. And they only put up 7 points. So, and they're missing their left tackle. But I think if the Bucs can at least split, and then it looks like you're going to get Mike Evans after the bye week. So that could be huge if they could somehow find a way to split. I don't think they're going to. I think they're going to go 0-2, and you're going to be 4-6. But, you're 4-6, you win 3 straight games, you're 7-6, you're right back in it. And then you got the Chargers, which is going to be a tough game. Then you're at Dallas, which is going to be a tough game as well. Panthers should win that. And then at home against the Saints, you should beat them. But then again, Derek Carr is coming back this week. So, after this stretch with the Chiefs and the 49ers, the schedule does get softer. But there are some tough games in there. So, and you look at, the NFC, and it's not going to be easy in the wild card. Your pathway to making the playoffs is most likely trying to win the division. But you're already 0-2 against the Falcons. So they did get a win against the Saints. They haven't played the Panthers yet. So at least if they can maybe win out against those teams and you go 4-2, we'll see. But there's still a lot of season left. And, despite the injuries, they're still putting up points. It's just the problem is the turnovers and the defense. So that's how I look at it. But let me know what you guys think, though, about this game. Do you think that with this win, do you think this kind of cements, it's still early, but do you think that the Falcons now are in the driver's seat to win this division? Do you think the Bucs can somehow find a way to get themselves back in it? Let me know in the comments. And it's unfortunate because Baker's had a good year, and it's just the Buccaneers just ran into some bad luck. And it looks like that, we could be heading towards something similar to last year where, at one point they were 4-7. But let's see. They got to go up against the Chiefs. And, it's going to be a very tough game. That defense on the road, you're shorthanded. But, Baker's played some good games there before when he was a member of the Browns, even though they lost both in the playoffs and in the season opener. The season after that in 2021, but maybe they find a way. Who knows? So before we go to break, I just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat of any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. I will acknowledge it. Just makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCpodcast.net. That is GSMCpodcast.net. So when we come back from our next break, we will talk about the Dolphins-Cardinals game. We'll talk about Tua making his return to the field. We'll get into that, how he did, and we will also talk about the game itself and the Cardinals pulling off the win. So we'll get into all that when we return. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're going to now get into talking about the Dolphins-Cardinals game. We'll also talk about Tua as he made his return to the field after the concussion for the first time since week 2 against the Buffalo Bills, right? I think it was week 2. And look, the Dolphins looked like a different team offensively. You know, it really did show you. Yeah, it was week 2. It really does show you. And I know some people may, have their criticisms when it comes to Tua, and believe me, I'm one of those people. But you really did see how much the Dolphins really needed him when he went down, because they couldn't move the ball. They couldn't put up points. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle were they didn't do anything while he was out. And from Skylar Thompson to Tyler Huntley, and you had Tim Boyle play a little bit. The Dolphins needed him back. And he came back, and, you look at his numbers, and, I'm not going to say he was spectacular, but you know what? He wasn't bad. He was not bad from what we see here. And again, not like he put up monster numbers, but compared to what the Dolphins were getting, you'll take it. But the problem is, the Dolphins still ended up losing the game. 28-27, they lose to the Cardinals. They were up 20-10 in the third quarter. And, at that point, you're thinking, they're going to win this game, right? They got to. Cardinals are coming a long way, out west, making a cross-country trip over here. You thought, they should get this win, but they didn't. They got the ball to start off the game, and they went right down the field. There was actually a fumble on this drive, but the Dolphins ended up recovering it. Tua ended up losing the ball. Then there was another fumble, but again, Dolphins were able to retain possession. And then Raheem Mostert scores from 1 yard out. So 7-0 Dolphins, and you thought, all right, here we go. Dolphins are back. Then the Cardinals punted, and then it was 10-0. It was 10-0. Dolphins scored on their first 2 drives, and, Dolphins fans had to be really happy. 53-yarder by Jason Sanders. But then the Cardinals put together a drive. They went 9 plays, 70 yards, and that led to a Kyler Murray to Michael Wilson touchdown from 6 yards out, so that made it 10-7. Both teams punted. And the Dolphins got more points before the end of the half, a 25-yard field goal by Jason Sanders. So, yeah, that made it 13-7 at the half. Cardinals then opened up the half with a field goal, a 57-yarder by Ryland. So that made it 13-10. Dolphins then scored a touchdown, and that made it 20-10. Tua connected with Devon Achane for a 12-yard touchdown. But so, yeah, at that point you thought Dolphins should win this game. Cardinals punted. However, there was a fumble on the drive by the Dolphins, and that led to a safety, so that made it 20-12. And then the Cardinals scored, getting the ball. So, and Kyler connected with Marvin Harrison Jr. for a 22-yard touchdown. They went for 2. They did not get it. So it was a 2-point game. Then the Dolphins went up by 9. It was 27-18. Raheem Mostert scored his second rushing touchdown of the game, so that made it 27-18. Then the Cardinals scored again, and that was a James Conner touchdown, so that made it 27-25. Dolphins then punted, And then the Cardinals won at the buzzer. Chad Ryland, a 34-yard field goal to win the game. And the Cardinals pull off the upset, if you even want to call it that, 28-27. And yeah, it was kind of it was surprising. I you kind of thought the Dolphins had it, but they just didn't. And Kyler Murray had a good game, 26-36, 307 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Cardinals didn't run the ball great. James Conner only had 53 yards on the ground and a touchdown. Kyler only had 19. Trey McBride, underrated tight end, 9 receptions for 124 yards. He was their leading receiver. Marvin Harrison Jr., 6 receptions for 111 yards and a touchdown. Michael Wilson, 5 for 31 and a touchdown. Cardinals defense only had a sack in this game. And then on the other side, you see Tua's stats here. Was not bad, 28-38. 234 yards, a touchdown, no interceptions. Was only sacked once. The Dolphins ran the ball for 150 yards. They had 2 rushing touchdowns, 2 by Mostert. Achane had 97 yards on the ground. Mostert only had 19. Jalen Wright, their rookie running back, he had 18 yards on the ground. Tyreek Hill, 6 receptions for 72 yards, was still kind of held in check. But he's going to have a game where he goes off at some point. You will see that again. Devon Achane, 6 for 50 and a touchdown. Jalen Waddle, 4 for 45. Jonnu Smith had 4 for 20. Dolphins defense, no sacks in this game off of Kyler. But, yeah, now they dropped to 2-5. You win this game, 3-4 looks a lot, well, and you're probably saying, yeah, obviously. Yeah, 3-4 looks a lot better than 2-5. 2-5, I mean, by no means are the Dolphins just out of it completely. But, I mean, looking at their schedule right now, as I love to look at team schedules, they got the Bills coming up. Then you got the Rams. Raiders and Patriots in between, a tough stretch there, so they should win those games. Then you got the Packers, the Jets at home, the Texans, the Niners, the Browns, and then the Jets again. I mean, the Jet games you should win both, the way the Jets are playing. But, then again, the Dolphins aren't playing great either. So, but yeah, it's not looking good right now. And you're playing the Bills this week, and that's a team that you struggle with. And now this game is in Buffalo, and the way the Bills have been playing as of late, yeah, I don't really like their chances in that game. The Bills have been playing some good football. I know they beat up on the Titans. They beat up on the Seahawks in Seattle, which is a tough place to play. But they own the Dolphins. So, Dolphins could be 2-6. They definitely could be. But we'll see. And then they got the Rams after that. And the Rams look like a completely different team now with Cooper Kupp back, with Puka Nacua back. The Rams are going to get their guys on the offensive line back as well. Dolphins got to start winning games. Tua's back now. Now there should be no excuses, but the defense has got to play better. And you got to get your playmakers more involved. But this is just his first game back. And the AFC is a little bit different than the NFC. I feel like there definitely is still a pathway, for the Dolphins to, get back in this thing and maybe make a run at the playoffs. But, they got to start winning football games. That's the bottom line. And right now they're 2-5, and they're looking up at a lot of teams. So, but I do want to talk about the Cardinals, though. So the Cardinals are just such a weird team. And they've won 3 of their last 4 games. They're 4-4 right now. Believe it or not, they are actually in first place in the NFC West. Now, they're tied with the Niners and the Seahawks at 4-4, but technically they got the tiebreakers over those teams. And the Rams are 3-4. It's going to be interesting how this NFC West shapes out. But, give credit to Kyler Murray and that team. This is why people had them, being a sneaky team this year and potentially making the playoffs. Because they have talent on this team. Now, they still got a lot of work to do with this roster. They got to continue to improve this defense. And I think, this is another team that I think, maybe in the draft they go and try to get a receiver. That's just one thing I would say. But I like the direction the Cardinals are going in. I think a lot of people, though, they have, their questions when it comes to Kyler. I think Kyler is a good quarterback, but can they win with Kyler Murray is the question. Can they get to the playoffs and can Kyler take them on a run? That's something that, I think still remains to be seen. We only got one glimpse of him in the playoffs, and it was horrendous against the Rams the year they won the Super Bowl. So that's a question that still needs to be answered, and maybe it's never answered. But he is the guy for the Cardinals right now, and you see what he can do. The talent is there, but in a big spot, can he deliver? And you know what? Look, they were down on the road on the East Coast, and they came back. The Dolphins are a different team than they were, last week when you had, Tyler Huntley playing. Now you got Tua, so it was going to be a tough game. But you know what? Give them credit. They won the game. They've beaten the 49ers on the road, and the 49ers have had issues, but you know what? Give them credit there. They won that game, and, they beat a good Chargers defense at home. Give them credit. I'm trying to see what were their other wins. So, yeah, they beat the Dolphins, they beat the Chargers, they beat the 49ers. Well, then they beat the banged-up Rams team. But, against the Lions, they only lost by 7. They struggled in that game. And then you know what, you can make the argument they should have beaten the Bills in week 1. They had that game, and then Josh Allen and the Bills came roaring back. So, but, yeah, they're 4-4, and, they got a shot. There are a lot of teams in the NFC that, have a chance to make the wild card. And you would have thought it was like the reverse. You thought the AFC was going to be the conference that, they'd be battling it out. But that's just not the case. Okay. Yeah, we've been having issues with with stuff going on in the house. So we just we got that squared away. So that was my dad telling me that. I kind of wish he waited till after the show to tell me that, but that's okay. That's all right. That's at least one good thing that we've gotten taken care of. Because we were dealing with had a crazy few days. We had a bee infestation, and then we also had our pipes being clogged, and those have been taken care of. But in between all that, we also had the World Series last night, and that was rough. And I'm just gonna leave it at that. I'll be honest, I didn't even want to do the show today after last night, but you know what? You have to. I wasn't gonna be like, oh, I can't do this, but it just that's the kind of mood that I was put in after last night. So, and I'm sure during the production meeting it'll be discussed. But anyways, now I kind of just went off on a tangent there. But yeah, so that's what's been going on in my house at the moment. But so but the Cardinals, they pick up a win, go to 4-4. Dolphins, I mean, they got to bounce back somehow, right? So we'll see. But, let me know what you guys think about this game. How did you think Tua played? Let me know in the comments. So we're going to take our next break of the show. And then when we come back, we will talk about the Eagles and their win over the Bengals, winning 37-17. We'll get into that when we return. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for the fourth part of the show, we're going to now get into the Eagles-Bengals game, what's kind of funny about this game is that this game and Browns-Ravens were the two games that my friends and I were deciding on whether or not to go to, because we could have went, to Cincy and saw the Bengals and Eagles, and that game to me, when we were discussing this when we were planning our trip, this was probably the game that this was the game I wanted to go to more, because the Browns, with Deshaun Watson, and just I don't know, I just thought this was the better matchup here, but thankfully we did not do that. And if you remember, they switched around some things, because originally Bears Commanders, that was in the early window, but then they moved it to the late window, and they made that a Nance Romo game. And this game got moved down, moved back to the early window. So, but then we decided on Browns-Ravens, and we went to the game of the year possibly, or one of the games of the year. And this game actually was close. I think it was 17-17 at one point. It was looking like it was going to be a good game. It was going to be a nail biter. But then the Eagles just pulled away. After it was 17-17, the Eagles just ended up scoring 13 unanswered points to end the game. They outscored the Bengals in the fourth quarter, 13-0. So, yeah, and the Eagles, I don't know, are they starting to maybe turn the corner? Maybe, but look, the Bengals have a very good offense. Their defense is not good. The Giants have a good defense, but they don't have a good offense. And then they played Deshaun Watson and the Browns the week before that. And now they have the Jaguars this week, which they should win. So that would get them to 6-2. But I think this will really define the Eagles season. From week 10 to week 13, you have the Cowboys at Jerry World. You have the Commanders. You have the Rams with a healthy offense in week 12. And then you're at the Ravens, week 13. That is on December 1st. So that 4-week stretch right there. And then in between that, because then you have the Steelers, the Commanders, and the Cowboys again in weeks 15 through 17. In between all that, you got the Panthers week 14. So pencil that in as a win. So really from weeks 10 to 17, that is going to define your season. What the Eagles actually are. I mean, I kind of know what they are at this point. I don't think they're a bad team. I don't think they're an elite team. They're in the middle. They're in the middle. And they're 5-2 right now. Give them credit. But you know what? Look, the Bengals have been putting up a lot of points this year, despite the defense not being good. They held Joe Burrow in that offense down in the second half. So, but let's kind of go through the drive summary or the game summary. Bengals got the ball to start off the game. They put together a 10-minute drive. Wow. They go down the field, and Joe Burrow connected with Jamar Chase, who's been unreal. He caught a touchdown there, so that made it 7-0. Jake Elliott on the Eagles' first drive kicked a 39-yard field goal, so it was 7-3. Then the Bengals responded. Evan McPherson kicked a 27-yard field goal, so that made it 10-3. Eagles punted. McPherson missed a field goal, a 54-yarder, and then the Eagles cashed in. They scored a touchdown, a tush push. And Jalen Hurts finished with, I think, 3 rushing touchdowns. Well, rushing touchdowns in quotations. Yeah, he had 3 rushing touchdowns in the game and 1 passing. But yeah, so it was 10-10 at the half. Then the Eagles scored a touchdown on their first possession to open up the second half. Jalen Hurts a 7-yard rushing touchdown, so that wasn't a tush-push rushing touchdown. So, yeah, 17-10. And then the Bengals answered. Chase Brown scored from 4 yards out. Eagles then responded. They ended up scoring a touchdown on their next drive. Jalen Hurts connected with Devontae Smith for a 45-yard touchdown. The Bengals turned it over on downs on their next possession. Eagles then got into field goal range, and Jake Elliott kicked a 49-yard field goal. Then Joe Burrow threw a pick. That led to another Eagles touchdown, a tush-push by Jalen Hurts from 1 yard out, 34-17, and then the Bengals fumbled. Mike Gesicki fumbled, and then that led to another Jake Elliott touchdown. So, yeah, that was a 47-yarder, and that was the final score, 37-17. And the Eagles, they outscored the Bengals in the second half, 27-7. 27-7. You got to give them credit there. You know, this is a good Bengals offense. Now, they were missing T. Higgins, and that's a big loss for them. But got to give them credit. Saquon Barkley had over 100 yards rushing in this game. Jalen Hurts, he went 16-20 for 236 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, was not sacked at all in this game. Devontae Smith had 85 yards receiving and 1 touchdown. A.J. Brown had 5 for 84. Eagles defense only had 1 sack in the game. And then for the Bengals, Joe Burrow went 26-37 for 234 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Chase Brown had 32 yards on the ground and a touchdown. Mike Gesicki, 7 for 73. Jamar Chase had 9 for 54 and a touchdown. Jermaine Burton had 1 for 41. Gesicki lost the fumble in this game. Bengals defense, like I said, had no sacks. So, but yeah, the Bengals are 3-5. You know, I did pick them in this game because they were at home. But, yeah, that defense, you know, you won those 2 games against the Giants and the Browns. Browns was with Deshaun Watson for the most part, and then you had DTR, and then Jameis threw a touchdown at the end. But, you know, against some of these other teams, and losing to the Patriots in Week 1 should not have happened. They should have won that game. The Chiefs game they should have won. But, you know, against these good offenses like the Commanders, like the Ravens, like the Eagles, I mean, you're giving up 30-plus points. It's not good. You know, the Chiefs, you gave up 26 points. Well, there was a defensive touchdown there, so technically not 26. But still, the Bengals, right now, if I were to say, are they going to make the playoffs or not, I'm probably going to lean towards saying no. I mean, they're 2 games back. You do have the Chargers on your schedule. They do play them at some point because that's a team that's ahead of you at the moment. You know, you still got the Ravens again. Because right now, they're the only teams that are ahead of them. Well, you got the Broncos, the Ravens, and the Chargers occupying the 3 wildcard spots. Then you have the Colts, who are ahead of you. So, there's not that many teams that they got to climb up. They got to climb over, but you still got to climb over those teams. So, and the defense just still has not been playing good. And I don't know. I don't think they're going to be able to correct it. Now, they do have the Raiders this week. I think they should win that game. You get to 4-5. But then you got the Ravens on the road. You got the Chargers, who have a good defense, on the road. You know, it's going to be tough. It is going to be really tough. But, you know, they just got to outscore people. I mean, and you know, this was a 17-17 game. It was anybody's ball game, but the Eagles just took over, and you got to give them credit. But, yeah, like I said, did the Eagles turn the corner? I can't say yes yet. I mean, I guess, you know, winning against the Bengals on the road, I'll give them that, you know. But I got to see how they do when they get to the tough part of their schedule. When they're taking on their divisional opponents, how are they going to be when they take on the Commanders? Because the Commanders are playing really well right now. You know, how are they going to stack up with the Cowboys? I mean, right now, the way the Cowboys are playing, I think the Eagles should beat them both times. They should. But who knows? And then, you know, the Rams and Ravens back-to-back weeks. Both road games. How is that going to go? They did beat the Rams on the road last year. How are they going to do here? That's on Sunday Night Football. And then you got the Ravens. You know, so, which that should be a a really good game. 2 mobile quarterbacks. With Lamar Jackson. We'll see how that goes. But look, the Eagles are 5-2. Despite everything I am saying right now, the Eagles are in a good spot. They're 5-2. They're in a wild card spot right now. I mean, right now, the best player on that team is Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley right now is the best player on the Eagles. Offensively. And he is making a difference for this team right now. Now, if you think about it, the Eagles could be 6-1. Because if Saquon doesn't drop that pass, Falcons way back in week 2, you're 6-1. You're 6-1. But they're not. And what was your other loss that I'm blanking on? Their other loss came against the Buccaneers. Yeah, so they're 0-2. Well, no, sorry. They are 1-2 against the NFC South. Yeah, the Buccaneers game, they had no chance. But Falcons should have won that game. You'd be 6-1. You would, if they win that game, they're in first place in the NFC East. But they're only a half game back of the Commanders, and they still haven't played them yet. So I'm curious to see how those games go. And I said this before, the Commanders, they gave the Eagles problems last year. Both games. It took everybody. It took everything for the Eagles to win those games. One of them went to overtime. The other one they were down and they came back. Now this team is better. So, and that defense that I've had, I said that was going to be one of the main reasons why I thought they just were not going to finish with a very good record. It's starting to play better. So, that was a team I was wrong about. I will fully admit that. I thought maybe, give them another year, get another draft, another good free agency. I was just kind of like, you brought in all these, these veterans that are kind of just past their prime, and, the defense, the secondary is still not great, and, the offensive line, might give Jaden Daniels problems, but no. The Commanders are a good team. They are a good team. I was wrong about them, and I will fully admit that. And right now I'm looking like I'm wrong about the Bengals as well, because I thought they'd be one of the top teams in the AFC North, and I had the Steelers, below that. I had below them. I had the Browns ahead of them, but Steelers right now are in a great spot. Russell Wilson's playing good football. That defense is playing well. They're running the football. Special teams has been great. Steelers are a good team. So, for the Bengals, they got a lot of catching up to do. They haven't played the Steelers yet. They've played the Browns once. They've played the Ravens once. And they're 1-1 in those games. So, and they got the Ravens coming up next week. Got to win. And then you go from there. And then, the Browns, now with Jameis in the fold, it's going to be different. So, and then for the Eagles, hey, you're 5-2. Give them credit. Take on the Jags, win that game, you're 6-2. And then you get to the tough part of your schedule. And we'll see. And like I said, we'll see what they're really made of. And yes, I'm including the Cowboys in the tough part of their schedule because it's a divisional opponent. And I still kind of don't trust the Eagles right now. So, but yeah, let me know what you guys think about this game. What were your takeaways from it? Let me know in the comments. So we are going to take our final break of the show. And then when we come back, we will talk about, once again, the last remaining undefeated team, the Kansas City Chiefs, as they once again win and defeat the Raiders. We'll say the Ravens. Defeated the Raiders. So we'll get into that when we return. So with that being said, one more time today, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we're going to get into talking about the Chiefs-Raiders game. Wanted to get into a couple of things. DeAndre Hopkins made his debut with the Chiefs, but was quiet. Only had 2 catches for 29 yards. Travis Kelce scored a touchdown. His first touchdown of the season. He had 10 receptions for 90 yards. Xavier Worthy also had a touchdown in this game. Kareem Hunt had a touchdown in this game. Patrick Mahomes threw a horrible interception. The Chiefs were backed up deep in their own territory, and he throws a pick. But guess what ends up happening? The Chiefs' defense prevents the Raiders from scoring. They don't get any points on that drive. Nothing. And that is the strength of the team. Once again, is that defense. They lost L'Jarius Sneed. Doesn't matter. That defense is still elite. I mean, it's one guy, but still, that was a big part of their defense. And it really does not matter. They still got most of those guys, but they just keep rolling. They actually scored a touchdown on their first drive. They went right down the field, 9 plays, 70 yards. Mahomes hit Hopkins for 13 yards, 25 yards to Kelce, 21 to Samaje Perine, and that led to a Kareem Hunt 1-yard touchdown. Then the Raiders, they actually responded on their drive. They went 12 plays, 70 yards, almost 7.5 minutes of time possession down the field, and Gardner Minshew connected with Jacoby Myers for a 7-yard touchdown. So they tied the game. Chiefs punted. Raiders, they kicked a field goal, so they were up 10-7. Carlson made a 54-yard field goal, but then the Chiefs responded with a touchdown to make it 14-10. Mahomes connected with Travis Kelce for a 5-yard touchdown. The Raiders punted, and then the Chiefs were able to get points before the half. A 42-yard field goal by Harrison Butker. So, yeah, that made it 17-10. Both teams exchanged punts. Then the Raiders then kicked the field goal on one of their drives, 32-yarder by Daniel Carlson, so that made it 17-13. But, yeah, Mahomes throws a pick. So there were a couple of penalties. You had illegal block above the waist, so that forced them back. And then you had offensive holding. That forced them back even more. Then another offensive holding. Wow, 3 straight penalties, and then an interception. So, yeah, that was not good. But then it didn't matter. You know why? Because the Chiefs' defense is elite. 4th and goal, they go for it, the Raiders, and Minshew ends up getting sacked. Then the Chiefs go 19 plays, 87 yards, almost 10 minutes of time possession, 9 minutes, 43 seconds. They get down into field goal range, and Harrison Butker from the 5 kicks a 24-yard field goal. So, yeah, that made it 20-13. Then the Raiders fumbled. That led to another Chiefs touchdown. They made it 27-13, and that was the Mahomes to Worthy touchdown. And then the Raiders, they put together a touchdown drive. Minshew connected with Turner for an 11-yard touchdown on 3rd and 10. And it was 27-20. But the Chiefs were able to get the onside kick. Raiders had no timeouts left, and they won the game. Mahomes went 27-38, 262 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. Kareem Hunt, 21 carries for 59 yards and a touchdown. Chiefs defense had 5 sacks in the game. As for the Raiders, Gardner Minshew went 24 of 30 for 209 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Alexander Mattison had 14 carries for 15 yards. Raiders only ran the ball for 33 yards. Brock Bowers, he was their leading receiver. Really no surprise there. 5 receptions for 58 yards. Jacoby Myers had 6 for 52 and a touchdown. DJ Turner, 4 for 28 and a touchdown. Madison, 5 for 29 in the passing game. Raiders defense only had 1 sack. So they fall to 2-6. And I had them at 8 wins. I thought, they were going to be somewhat more competitive this year. And, that really hasn't. I mean, they only lost by 7 here, but, the Chiefs should have won by multiple scores. But, yeah, they are, they're 2-6. And, they're heading towards maybe 4 or 5 wins at the moment. So that's another team that I thought, maybe there were some teams that I just was too high on. Even though I was only giving the Raiders 8 wins. I mean, I didn't have them making the playoffs or anything, but I don't know. I just thought you draft Brock Bowers, you still had Devontae Adams, they went out and got Christian Wilkins. I thought maybe, and I thought Antonio Pierce was going to actually change the culture with this team, but it's kind of just more of the same. So, now Devontae Adams is on the Jets. But the Chiefs just continue to win games, and, who knows when they will lose a game. I would like to think that the Buffalo Bills will give them their first loss, but I'm not sure. It's either going to be, it could be the Buffalo Bills, maybe it could be the Chargers, maybe it could be the Texans, maybe it could be the Steelers. Maybe Jameis pulls it off in Week 15. I don't know. There are some games left where they could lose. They could, but I don't know. I mean, I would love for my dad's sake if the Steelers won on Christmas against them. But, yeah, I don't know. They just continue to find ways to win. And it's not pretty. I mean, Mahomes still, hasn't been spectacular. The interception, was bad, but he had 2 touchdowns, threw for 260 yards. It's not like he had a bad game. And right now, so his touchdown to interception ratio, is it updated? Yeah, no. Right now he's got 10 touchdowns. No, wait. No, he's got 8. Yeah, it's 8-9. It's 8-9 right now. Which I can't believe after, week 8. That's his touchdown to interception ratio. It's 8-9. You wouldn't expect that. This guy threw for 50 touchdown passes his first season. But either way, look, he's not playing good, but the Chiefs are undefeated. So, and what happened last year? I'm going to keep saying it. We kept saying, this is not going to be the year, is it? They're not going to win this year. They did win. And you know what? They may look like this now, but you got some guys coming back on offense. Once you get to the playoffs, it is completely different. It's completely different. And they know how to get it done in the playoffs. They know how to get it done. So we could sit here and say, yeah, the offense, Mahomes doesn't look good. The touchdown to interception ratio is not great. Does not matter. Does not matter. The defense is the strength of the team right now. And you know what? Travis Kelce, he scored his first touchdown. He's going to have multiple touchdowns in the playoffs if he's playing. So we could sit here and say, this might not be it. You don't know that. You don't know that. We saw the same thing unfold last year, and they won the Super Bowl. So, but it's going to be tough. Like the Ravens, despite them losing against the Browns, they've gotten it going offensively with Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. So, I want to see them play against each other again. There's other teams. I mean, the Bills. I mean, it's going to be the same teams that they always run into. So it's going to be like, well, they're just going to beat them again. We'll see. But let me know what you guys think though about this game. Chiefs are still undefeated. Raiders 2-6. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed the show today. I am definitely going through it right now with, what happened last night in the World Series. And like I said, it definitely was tough getting up and coming on and doing this show. But got to do it, I obviously, I used to do the baseball podcast. Now I'm doing this, but it's just, I can't really I don't want to get into all of it, but it was definitely definitely the worst loss I've probably ever experienced as a sports fan, honestly. And it's funny because the game one of the World Series, I thought it was that one. But no, it was the one last night. 2 losses like that in less than a week. I love sports, but when you experience things like that, it just, and we all have. We've all experienced losses. Some worse than others. And the losses in the World Series those were the worst losses I ever experienced. And I don't, and that's just how I feel right now. But you know what? Still got football to enjoy that, even though it's not even like I have a good football team to root for. Right now the football teams I'm rooting for don't exist. They're not real. They're fantasy football. Those are the teams that I'm still invested in. And because the Giants aren't good, and the Jets prediction looks horrible right now. Let's see if they get a win tonight. But yeah, it's just and I'm gonna have to probably I'll be going into the production meeting in a little bit, and and I have to talk about it. But it is what it is. That's what it's like being a sports fan. You're gonna have your highs and you're gonna have your lows. And right now, there's a lot of lows. So, but yeah. Anyways, enough of that. I hope you guys enjoyed the show today. We'll be back again tomorrow. We'll do our picks. We'll take a look at some of the big matchups for this weekend, both in college and in the NFL. So make sure to tune in for that tomorrow. So make sure to check out all the other shows. Like I said, give the other shows some love. Actually, I did want to shout out TJ, who does the sports podcast. It will be his last day today, so make sure to check out his show. He's done a great job, and gonna miss his presence on the network. So he's been kind of one of the staples, but he's gonna be leaving. This is his last day doing a show, so make sure to check out his show. Does a great job. I had him on my show once, and this was way back. This was like sometime last year, but or maybe the beginning of this year. I don't even remember, but it was a while ago. So, just wanted to shout him out, wish him good luck, and So, like I said, make sure to check out all the other shows, give the other shows some love. And as always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of